Hello. This is my office. It's nice. I like it. I've been working in it for basically 8 years now. I'm always just sitting here alone, working on stuff, and that's fun. But again, as I mentioned, for the past couple months, I've been working on this other gig where I'm sitting in a room with people who are also working on the same project, and just it's been really nice having a change of pace, where I'm able to work with other people basically and kind of feed off of that energy. Been learning a lot. Been learning a lot with them. Very talented. But I've also been learning that I am very fast at modeling, and that's something I wanted to talk about a little bit today because there's a few ways to get better and faster at modeling. The first one is developing a good sense of muscle memory, and that's where your fingers know what to do without you even really having to think about it cognizantly. Like if you're tying your shoes or playing piano or guitar or driving or anything you've done enough that like your conscious part of your brain doesn't really have to be thinking about it, and that's very useful. That's why I always recommend learning the hotkeys instead of using the gizmos here, because your fingers are just waiting to take over all of that stuff. The second way is just learning the interface, and that comes with experience and watching tutorials, all the stuff we're doing here on the Patreon and Googling how do I do this. And the last way is just figuring out like little processes where you learn how to think backwards. You think of what you want to be modeling, and then you go, okay, so I have to do this, so I have to do this, so I have to do this. And so you kind of set yourself up for success. And I think of those as kind of like algorithms, little cheats or hacks or modules that you employ to get a final result. And those are the things you kind of have to learn from experience or somebody showing you. It's the reason I really like watching woodworking YouTube, where somebody's just making a really nice bookcase or something, because a lot of times they'll be trying to like cut a curve, and I'm like, how would you do that? And you just see them in like 2 seconds with their muscle memory. They make a little jig that will cut the curve in a way that like never would have occurred to me in a million years, but for them it's second nature. And so that's what I kind of want to go through today. Some of those techniques that save me a lot of time that maybe aren't the most intuitive. It's probably all stuff we've talked about, over the years here, but I want to kind of condense it because I've been living in Watford, London, England, which has been an interesting little town. But what I like about all of their stores is I'm used to stores that kind of like recess into the building, and then you'll have the storefront kind of in a window under an overhang or something. But here everything protrudes. It's almost like something that's built on top of the front base of the building, and I think that's really interesting. You walk around these towns and you're just seeing, it's almost like a billboard that you can kind of enter into, and the signage and the visual language, and a lot of times there's a lot of diversity between every single store, and so it's just a very rich place to look at and be like, how would I model that? How would I model that? And your brain starts to kind of take over. For example, I see a pattern like this, and like even just in real life, my brain starts to be like, how would I model this? So we take a plane, we're gonna subdivide it a few times. I'm gonna hit Control-Shift-B to bevel each individual vertex here, select everything, and in face selection mode, I'm gonna hit I twice to inset every individual vertex. And yeah, look at that. We assign all of these to be one material, the inverse to be a different material, and we've modeled that pattern. And looking at this, my brain is like, all right, what other kind of algorithms do I have? And I go, okay, well, I could extrude this down a little bit to kind of add some grout. I could expand the selection with Control Plus on the numpad, hit H to hide that in edit mode, and with proportional editing here set to random, I can just grab some of these faces here and maybe pull them up a little bit, and that'll move everything else within kind of the radius, a random amount. I want to keep it just very, very subtle here. Yeah. And then if I hit Alt-H, suddenly we've got, it's very subtle. And yeah, now you have a kind of tile floor. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to break down some of what I'm doing here in case, I never want it to be a because I said so type thing. If you're like, why does Control, Shift B turn all of these, vertexes into squares? We're going to get to that in a second. But first, let's do some material stuff here. I'm just going to give the grout material kind of a dark gray here. Then I'm going to select one of these faces. And something I use all the time now that I didn't when I was starting is Shift G, which is the Select Similar menu here. I'm going to select by similar area, which already, since all of these were made in the same process, they all have the same area, but you can also turn up the threshold here so you kind of have a margin of error. But here, let's create another material, and we'll just assign that white, and I'm going to do the same thing with this little square here, and So it turns out these long ones and these squares kind of have the same area here. What else could we do? Let's hit Shift G and select similar perimeter. Yeah, okay. So that's the length around each face, and that's about the same. Here we can turn up the threshold a little bit, get that final last one probably. There we go. And here we'll give it a little blue. And assign that. And there we go. We've got a little kitchen floor. One thing that's nice about being able to assign different faces to different materials is it makes it really easy to select them after the fact without having to make like a vertex group or whatever. So if I go back into edit mode and let's say we want to bevel all of these large pieces just to kind of like give a little bit of a sun glint on them, we can just select that material and hit select, and it selects all those faces. So now we can hit Control B. And yeah, maybe just round them out a little bit. Shade auto smooth. I'm going to turn down that angle a little. And now you can see we've got that little bit of highlight and that little bit of shading on the edges there, which can sometimes be all the photorealism you need. Okay, so what were we just kind of doing there? And I'm going to be, again, I'm just kind of trying to info dump a little bit. I'll be jumping all over the place. But let's create a cube. And we all know beveling, it's so great. If we tab into edit mode and go to edge selection mode, select one of these edges and hit Control B, we've got this thing that kind of cuts the corner. It basically splits the difference between this edge right here and this edge right here. And as you drag further away or closer to the edge, you know beveling. You can scroll up and down, add more faces. If you scroll all the way down, it just cuts it off like that, which is cool. So that's for edges, but you can also bevel just an individual vertex here. And if I select this and hit Control Shift B, you can see it does the same thing, but just cuts off that entire corner. But what happens if there isn't a difference in angle to actually split? Like here, if we have a plane here, and let's create our same little triangle kind of deal like that. Select that vertex and hit Control Shift B. It's going to do the exact same thing, but you can see it's not actually changing the shape of the plane. It's just adding new geometry on top of it. And that means now if we go in here and select all of these edges, we can bevel those, which again, normally if you hit Control B here, it's just splitting that one edge into two and splitting the angle. But since we don't have a difference in angles, it's just going to be splitting all these edges in two. And then we can deselect this face, extrude those down, and there we go. In fact, the thing I use bevels for the most is smoothing. Like if I've gotten kind of quick and dirty and I'm extruding this piece around, but then I want to kind of smooth it all out, I can just hit Alt-click to select that edge loop and Alt-Shift-click to select that one, Control B, and you can see it kind of smooths it out. But if I scroll up to add more, we've suddenly made this kind of cool organic shape out of just a couple quick extrusions in a bevel. It's the same if I'm trying to model a vehicle or something. I kind of block it out. I can select all of the edges that I want to be rounded, and I can just kind of smooth out this whole blocked-in low-poly vehicle really, really fast. And what else could we do with that? I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to give it 28 vertices around the edge here. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and let's turn on the screencast keys. Yeah. And I'm going to make it kind of pillar-shaped. We can use Control R to add an edge loop. Hit S to scale it up just a little bit, smooth it out with Control B. Again, we can kind of smooth that out. And let's use Control R to add some more loops up there too. So I want to do select every other edge around the entire thing here. So I'm just going to, let's see, Control Alt click on that, which selects, basically if you Alt click, you select an entire edge loop like this. But if you Control Alt click, you select the perpendicular loop, and a lot of times it feels a little bit funky like this. Then if I go select, check or deselect, it automatically deselects every other one, and you can kind of change the ratios if you want. And then we can go select, select loops, select edge loops, which just extends every single edge along that original selection we would have made. Looks kind of cool. I'm going to make sure X-ray is toggled on, and in edge selection mode, I'm going to deselect these top and bottom ones. And now if I hit Control B, I can scroll up. Yeah. If you hit Control plus on the numpad, it expands the selection. And if you hit Control negative, it retracts it. And if you don't have a numpad, you can go to select more or less. Yeah, it's literally just called more or less. We'll go select less. And I can hit Alt S to move everything along its own normal here. And we've suddenly got kind of a column type deal. Here, actually, let's undo some of that. I'm going to hit Control B. Make it a little bit more, Yeah, there we go. And if we hit Control Plus to expand that selection and bevel it again, we can smooth it out. Yeah, that kind of looks like a column. I guess we probably could have done it a little bit more, but that's okay. One thing that I hate having to do is like if I have a cube and then I have to line it up with this, and like you got to go to all of these other angles, and the cube will always spawn wherever the 3D cursor's at. So if I shift right click, the 3D cursor's there. If I create a cube, it appears right there. But we can set where that 3D cursor is with a lot of precision. If we select this object, go to face selection mode, select that, and hit Shift S, cursor to selected, the 3D cursor will snap right to that selected face, and now when we create a cube, it'll appear exactly where we want it. I use this absolutely all the time. Or if I want to do something that I know is going to be right there, I'll just duplicate this face instead, because then I know it's already there, and I can just kind of start playing with it, you know, however I want. So with that there, let's create a cube here. I'm going to scale it up, kind of make, we're just doing a quick little column. Inset and extrude, I and E are absolutely fantastic. Inset, extrude, here we'll go down there like that. So beveling is cool, Control B, woo! But if we go down into this little pop out tab, you can see we've actually got a lot of other options too. We can turn up the number of segments, all the stuff we normally do. But if we go under profile type, you can see we've got custom, and that lets us actually decide what the shape of the profile is going to be. So I'm going to like create something kind of wonky here. Maybe a little zigzag. Turn up the number of segments a little bit, and you'll see they'll all kind of fall in line with that this crazy shape that we made. So now we have kind of a little decorative trim right here. In fact, we can select this loop, Control B, and it'll remember that, so we can really fast create, here we can scroll down, maybe not have this one quite as high res, but we can add a lot of geometry really quick. We can select all these corner edge loops with Alt and then Alt Shift click, and if we hit Control B now, you can see it's still doing that funky curve, which is kind of cool, but also we can easily change this back to super ellipse and change the shape to be concave instead. And here, if we select all of these and scale it up, and duplicate this and put it on the bottom, we've really quickly made kind of this vague, fancy kind of column thing, which is cool because a lot of these storefronts are pretty basic, but then they would put some little decorative bit on it, just kind of elevate it a little bit. It was a really interesting kind of mix of different styles. Like right here, we've got square windows behind kind of this facade arch over this orange shop that like at night is full of these, you know, cool LED lights. Looks kind of like this. And actually, I'm kind of frustrated because I look like a total weirdo walking around town taking pictures through the open doors and windows of all of these different shops at night, because I thought it would make a really good asset. But it turns out the iPhone does this really bizarre processing where it straightens vertical lines, which kind of, I guess, can look okay, but it does mean that like the perspective you're getting is impossible and not actually real world perspective, which means it's really hard to reproject or use F-spy with or anything. Like this is the vanishing point, but why are these lines sloped in? And it's because there's actually quite a bit of distortion, curve distortion on these lines, and they're straightening it out. Apple has a patent on it. So anyways, if I can figure out how to do anything useful with this, I will. But in the meantime, let's model this type of shape. We've got a protrusion. We've got 3 bundles of 3 windows, except this one is actually a door. So if I create a plane here, scale it up, kind of try to match those same ratios. Control R to add this protruding bit at the top. And then to get these 3 chunks here, I might just kind of Control R hand place those, and then a Control B to pop that one out. Control R to add this bottom edge here, maybe move it down, and then separate these into windows. And we'll do the door in a second, but first we'll just do all of these windows here. If you hit I to inset, they all inset together, but if you hit I again, it insets individually, which is what we want for these nice window frames. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to extrude it back. I'm going to inset again and extrude, just kind of add a little like sealant or something kind of around the edge. Door, I'm going to add one more loop here that just bisects everything, and up here we'll add another little kind of door top window, using that same kind of technique. And the same thing for here. In this case, I want all of this to be one window pane, so I might just hit I again, kind of merge those. Extrude, inset, extrude. And if we select this glass, and this glass, and then go to Shift-G, select similar coplanar, which just means everything that is flat in line with like that same face. Like if we go to the edge here, you can see that all of our windows have been extruded to a certain depth. If I hit Shift-G coplanar, everything else along that same depth will be selected, especially if I turn down the threshold so it's only those faces there. So now I could get everything like a kind of dark building material. And by default, the first material you make is assigned to everything. If we go into rendered view here, you can see everything's kind of dark. We can create a new material. We'll call it glass, and I'll just make this be glass right now and assign to selected. And there we go. That's the storefront. A quick thing to know, just if you don't know about the glass shader, it needs to have a material with depth because it's going into the object, which is refracting it 1 bit, and then it's exiting the object, which is basically unrefracting it, kind of. And so if you only have a single flat plane, it's going to refract it and just look weird forever. If we turn the roughness down, you can see like this doesn't make any sense. If you're just looking through a pane of glass, it shouldn't be refracting it in that way. If we tab back into edit mode and select all of our glass and hit Y, that's going to separate it from everything else. And if we extrude everything back, now it should be rendering a little bit better. One thing I found, if you're ever trying to extrude, something to make it solid for glass, if you extrude it in the wrong direction, it'll actually extrude inside out. And I don't know which way this is yet. I think it's correct. If we turn on face orientation, okay, yeah, you can see these actually are inside out, which every piece of geometry kind of has an outside and an inside. So the top of a face is blue and the underside is red. And if we extrude up, the entire cube is going to be blue. But if we extrude down, it all becomes red, which means inside out. Which basically means the light thinks as it enters the object, it calculates as if it's exiting, and it does the inverse, which sometimes looks okay. But here, if we take a look at this, it's just looking kind of funky. Whereas if we select everything and hit Shift N to recalculate the normals right there, suddenly everything is just feeling a lot more natural. And this is especially important if you have like crazy curving glass or whatever. What else do we want to do? Sometimes adding a little lip under a window can be good. Control R, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna select all of these by hand. If I alt click, it'll also kind of go into the doorway, which is a little bit weird. That said, instead of just shift clicking on everything, I can select this one and then control click on this one, and it'll select everything in between, which is a really nice way to just kind of be able to move around and select big batches of stuff. I'm going to extrude, maybe scale it vertically, pull it down a little bit. I might do the same right here. Select this, control shift, control, do the same thing here, shift, control, extrude it out. Cool. I'm going to select this door, and let's actually make it not be a glass door. Here I'm going to apply that gray material to it too. And let's get a little bit neoclassical, because there's so many fun tricks for really quickly doing that sort of thing. I'm going to divide this up into panels. In fact, let's select this edge here, and I'm going to hit Control X just to dissolve it. In fact, let's get this door to be its own object. I'm going to select it and hit P, separate by selection. So now it'll be a little bit easier to go into solo mode, which is just hitting, backslash on the numpad. And I'm going to clean up these guys too, because they're kind of left over. I'm going to hit X, limited dissolve, which should just melt any geometry that isn't actually affecting the shape. Like if we have a bunch of edges here, but then go limited dissolve, it goes, okay, well it's the exact same angle before and after. We don't need those, which is nice. That said, let's add them back. We can use Control R to subdivide these here. I'm going to select all 4 of these. If I hit inset a couple times, you can see we get these kind of panels here. And remember, if I hit Control B, we can separate these. If I scroll up, we can get a little more geometry in there. Control negative on the numpad, ooh, does nothing. Why does it do nothing? It's because we're in face selection mode, which means we've got a face here and a face here, and it goes, all right, I'll deselect one face less from either side. Turns out there's no more faces in there. But if we go to edge selection and do the exact same thing, Control negative, it selects the middle part too, because if you select all 4 edges of a face, it goes, that face is selected. And if we deselect that loop, then we can't hit Control negative to select that thing that we want. So what do we do in this case? Well, we could do a couple things. One, we could just alt click, and that takes 2 seconds, and that's a good thing to learn. But we could also Control B and add one more loop in there by scrolling up. And now we've divided this into 3 different sections. And now if we hit Control negative, it'll still leave that middle one, which is kind of cool. So if we hit Alt S, it'll move these faces out along their normals. And I know you know it, but if you don't, we've all got to learn it at some point. Under overlays, let's turn on normals. Normals are the line that kind of protrudes perpendicular from a face. So you can see, it goes like that. This one goes here. This one goes that way. It's just the direction that the face is facing. And by default, when you hit E, it's extruding along the direction of that line. And a quick thing to know, if you extrude multiple faces, you can see this one's going up, left, and right. It will average all three of those out, so it's going off in this weird kind of 45-degree angle. Which is weird, because let's say we want to kind of extrude this loop right here. It'll kind of just glitch out a little bit. It doesn't know which direction it wants you to go, so it kind of goes, sometimes it'll go up or down. But if you hit Alt-E, you get other options, and we can extrude faces along normals, which means every face is going to be moving out along its independent direction, which is very, very handy for being able to just kind of like mock stuff up. All right, undo. Ooh, and if we want, we can hit Control B, kind of bevel these corners a little bit. One thing to know about Control B when you're working like this is you can see now we've added some bizarre triangles here, and that's fine. I don't care, except that can affect you later on. Like what you're doing when you're selecting an edge loop, like Control R, all it's doing is it's connecting. If you say you start right here, it's going to the opposite side of that quad, which means it ignores this face and goes right here, and it's very easy for it to go, okay, yeah, that's the line. But if the face doesn't have four sides, like if we hit Control Shift B to bevel, you know, this little bit right here, suddenly this square has 5 sides. So when you try to select an edge loop, it gets to this one and it just stops because it gets confused. Which, if you were planning on using edge loops for doing a lot of quick and dirty modeling, beveling too soon means that suddenly you're going to have to be doing a lot of like independent hand holding and connecting and doing all of this stuff. So a lot of times I'll avoid doing these types of little bevels that I know will like add these little triangles, just because I know that means that like I might have to get in there and, you know, spend more time. But let's go back to our building here. In fact, I'm going to select these guys and let's do that same thing. Inset, Control B, scroll up a couple times, Control negative, Alt S to move it out along the normal. And again, instead of reselecting all of these middle pieces, I might just expand the selection and then deselect it. And so we only get, oh, that middle one right there, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I'm going to inset again and then Alt S to kind of move it out. We can do the same right here. Shift G, select by area. Inset, Alt S, and I still have my little pillar here, so let's just kind of stick my stupid pillar up here towards the front here. Maybe we'll squash these tops and bottom bits. Give it that same gray material here. Maybe stick it over there too. Feels weird that these are kind of intersecting, so I'll select this, Shift G, coplanar, which should select that other one too because they were extruded the same way, and Alt S, and let's see if it looks ridiculous if I just kind of pull it back so it's flush. Not at all. It looks weird, they're protruding up there, and you can see right now if we try to select this edge loop, it's actually going to go all the way around. So instead, I'm just going to select this edge here, kind of move it a little bit, extrude it up, scale it out, and that way I didn't have to bother with, you know, creating a cube and moving it in there and doing all of that. I don't know. Sometimes there's things I do that I think save me time that probably don't, but and look, I would have thought the columns would look really stupid, but they actually kind of work, and that's the value of observing from real life a little bit. And one of my favorite things to do that I always want to do on this Patreon is just look at an image and go like, what can we learn from just looking at this image? But my guess is it's not nearly as fun for everybody else as it is for me. But like, look at this. See this storefront? You know how to model that in like 30 seconds now. In fact, we could model almost all of this really fast. But what's really useful is the micro little secret details. Like, look at this, the place the grime drips from each letter. That's absolutely fantastic. And just the way that like it's got this silver outside, and you've got kind of this colored inside. We'll do this in a second. I also like this right here. The letters kind of are cut out on top of some translucent material, so you can kind of light it from the back. We could do that with just a boolean and a transparent plane behind it and any sort of like light source inside of it. Europe has a lot more of these kind of paving stones. I wanted to try something actually. Here, let's go into solid view. I'm going to create one paving stone here. I'm going to scale it down, bevel it a little bit with Control B. And on that same place, I'm going to create a plane here and scale it up and subdivide it a few times, maybe once more. And I'm going to turn on the fractal along normal. Along normal just means it goes up and down along the original face, and if you turn that off, everything kind of goes in any random direction it wants to. So we're going to keep it along normal. And an option that's really cool that I don't really use all that much, if we select this and go under Object, Instancing, it gives us these buttons here. And if we parent this paving stone to this plane with Control P, keep transform, and then select one of these options. You can see that paving stone appears on every single vertex or face. And not to make things confusing, but if you're wondering why all of these are small, we could just scale this up, until they're the original size. But the reason that's happening is because I scaled this plane up before I did any transformations on it. So if we go under the settings here, item, you can see the scale is set to 18 basically, whereas this one is set to 1, which means it's going through a transformation process as the paving stone enters into the space of the overall plane. And the way we can fix that is literally just by applying the scale here. So instead of having it being 17, we can hit Control A and apply the scale, and now everything's behaving as we expect because the scale is set to 1, as is the paving stone. And here, if we move this up a little bit, we'll get rid of these intersections, and we can just really easily kind of control how we want. We can do our same thing with the proportional editing here and make like weird broken kind of bits. That's fun. It's a thing I've realized, and we'd hide this or put it in another collection or something. It's a thing I've really found the more I work on stuff is it's the details like this that really add the final realism. Like I used to do all this stuff with an image texture and maybe extrude it or something, but having the actual geometry, especially because the way the computer thinks about it, this is so little geometry. This is so lightweight that it's usually worth it to do it. But here, let's select all of this, kind of flatten it all out again. In fact, let's grab this and kind of just add a little undulation to everything. And yeah, since we have it, we'll stick it in front of our storefront here. I might delete some of these vertices. And I could do a whole texture thing, but let's just do a quick one. We'll call it paving stones. We're not going to be focusing too much on texturing today. We've talked a lot in the past of how you can take a picture of a storefront and add edge loops and extrude it, and there we go. It kind of has a storefront. But I'm trying to get a little bit more into procedural texturing, where you can kind of just hand model stuff a little bit more free, a little less constrained. You have to be a little bit less dependent on image textures and still get good results, hopefully. And we make sure our paving stone is selected here. And let's see, if I just create a object info node and use random, but if we create a mix color node, I'm going to plug it into the second one and just make the base color maybe kind of dark. I'm going to multiply in this this other randomization here, turn up the roughness. It doesn't look great, but you kind of get where we're going for here. Let's make this kind of that cool green color. Oh yeah, oh that's fun. Let's add a secondary color here. I'm going to alt click on this loop here, and if I hit Shift G, select by area. Okay, yeah, we got lucky here. Gonna create another material. I'm just gonna make it kind of a nice gold color and assign it to there. Ooh, that feels nice. Oh, it looks like we accidentally selected that one down here, but that's okay. I'm gonna put a little interior here, and this is what I took all of those pictures for, because I thought it'd be so fun to just have all these really fast, low poly interiors you could just kind of throw inside the building. But in this case, I'm just gonna do this, select this this front face, and delete it. Make it a little darker in there. And I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select all of the glass objects and hit P, separate by selection so they're their own object, because that makes it a lot easier to control the visibility setting here. And I can turn off the visibility for shadow, which if we go inside, you can see that's a really big difference. And that's because path tracers don't actually play all that nice with refraction, because they're trying to get to a light source, but then suddenly they refract and they're like, where'd the light source go? And if you're wondering why that is, because that seems really weird, I've got a whole video I actually think turned out pretty good about it that I'll link to below, about path tracing and kind of optimizing your cycles renders. But let's see. Let's say this is in kind of a bad part of town and you want some sort of wrought iron thing going on in the front. So it would be really fun to just actually, do the work and model a proper cast iron type thing. Like, let's see, if we Control B, bevel that, and then select both of these edge loops and scroll way up for this, and then we select this middle loop, turn on proportional editing, set this to smooth, we'll set it to smooth, and then use Control R and scale down like this. Look at that. We can actually kind of make that wrought iron, that twisted wrought iron type thing. But let's not go quite that hard. I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to try to match that aspect ratio right there. I'm going to try to scale it like that. And do we want to do it with the wireframe modifier, or do we want to do it with the skin modifier? Let's just try doing, let's see. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do the same like that. I'm going to select all these vertices, and I don't know if this is going to work, but let's try check or deselect here. And good. I think as long as the corners aren't selected, it should work okay. If I hit Control-Shift-B to bevel those same little pieces there, we can get an interesting kind of pattern like this. And if we give that a wireframe modifier, generate wireframe, we've got a nice little kind of wrought iron deal. In fact, we can extrude some of these faces down like this. We've got a little kind of mounting point, maybe thicken it up. Maybe darken the material just a tad. Oh, that's kind of cute. Here, let's try to do the same thing right here. Going to create a plane, scale it to fit in edit mode, and let's see, Control R. Let's add a couple circles like that. I'm going to select these, Control Shift B, scroll up, and if I hit P, I can kind of change the profile to round them out to the way I want, like that. Now, if I just hit X, limited dissolve, it realizes none of those vertices were really necessary. But if I go to face selection, limited dissolve, it'll only look at the areas inside of these shapes, which is just a weird thing I kind of had to learn the hard way. And maybe we make these bigger if we go into individual origins. That'll allow us to scale up each individual circle on its own, though it looks like I have proportional editing on. And now that I have this, I can shift click on this bit right here and hit Control L, link transfer the materials and also the modifiers. I just might have to turn this one up a little bit right there. With the door, just to make room for a handle, I don't think we're gonna model a handle, but if we wanted to, we just do that. That looks kind of nice. I did think that I had a lot more of these little, algorithms than apparently I do. It's kind of interesting. I'm just kind of using the same few over and over. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can show you how I do those random inset holes. Here, let's go mesh, or select, check or deselect. We're going to bevel each individual point here with Control-Shift-B, scroll up, use P to change the profile, going to make it a circle, and then I'm going to go to face selection mode. I could just go X, limited dissolve, kind of clean that up and extrude it down, and that's a nice thing I do quite a bit. But again, that's just check or deselect and beveling vertices again. Since this is going to be in the thumbnail, let's keep going on this storefront a little bit and makes like some signage or something. I think I want to decorate these squares here a little bit by area, extrude that in a tad. And let's see if we can kind of continue this column visual language up a little bit. I should design this first, but I think I just want to keep it kind of simple. I'm going to extrude that down so it matches that. Pull this up, Control R. Let's extrude this out in every direction. Maybe I can still do that weird bevel. Ooh, okay, it's arched inwards. That's kind of cool. We'll do the same thing there. I guess that doesn't do anything. I'm going to use Control R, add a couple loops here. Just select these three, bevel them, extrude them out. Maybe tuck the whole thing in, and if we link that material, that's kind of nice. Here, I'm going to join these up with this, and let's try a different color than this green here. I'm just going to use Control-T to pull up the image texture nodes, and when in doubt, I love just doing kind of a weird plaster. Huh, that already feels kind of, I mean, that's weird, but I like that one too. I'm going to select this, I'm going to select the door, I'm going to tab into edit mode, hit U, cube projection, and in the UV editor, let's just make sure that's actually kind of covering everything. Oh, that's nice here. We can adjust the door maybe to be more solid of a color. Oh, I like that. And then if you remember the last video, I made this kind of unifying node group. If we go into the shader editor here and hit Shift-A, group the unifier, and slip that in the color, turn down the cleanliness. We can do the same thing with these tiles here, and that should help here. The unifier, turn down the cleanliness. That's looking good. I guess let's do some signage or something up there. In fact, I liked these windows. Let's model something kind of like this. Let's just try to get that arch going and see how it goes. I think we can do a lot of it with kind of insetting. First I'm going to do is make a place to add some eventual signage. Just duplicate this. And then maybe just create this little wall piece here. And let's see. Let's try, I'm going to do 40 vertices. Rotate this 90 degrees, and it's easier to inset in. And what's nice about insetting is it'll give you an equal thickness. Like if we have this line and we kind of extrude it, you can see it's really hard to get it to a point where like they're all an even thickness. But here, let's move this up here. If we take all of this and inset, and delete that. Suddenly this is an even thickness. So sometimes I like to rely on that a little bit. So I'm going to try to model the outside of the window and then work by insetting everything inwards. And I think that'll be a lot easier than trying to expand it outwards. Here, let's rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to go into X-ray mode here. Select everything from the halfway down, pull it down, SZ0, scales everything to 0 on the Z-axis. I'm going to select this front face, coplanar, which selects everything else here, Control-I. So a lot of times when you want to delete a bunch of stuff, it's easier to select the stuff you want to keep and then invert the selection, just like that. Let's select all of these. I'm going to do X limited dissolve, which, you know, gets rid of all the vertices that aren't actually affecting the shape. Now if I select this and hit I, we get that nice kind of window frame. And what's cool about this is this actually has, you know, this is an edge loop all the way around here. So we can like start extruding and beveling and doing whatever we want with that. Here, let's pull this back, inset, extrude. I love that process. Remember, we can do our kind of crown molding thing here if we go to our custom, turn up maybe the segments. We've got kind of the same thing right there. So I'm just going to create a cube right here, kind of make it be the right size. Bevel that out. I don't think I want all of this fanciness down here at the bottom, so I'm just going to delete all of these faces. X faces, select all these, SZ0, flatten all of that. Shift S, cursor to selected, so I can just create a cube here for the very base of it. Maybe just tuck that in a little bit. And this top piece is easy. Just gonna select right here so I can make the cube be, you know, already nice and centered. Gonna tuck down this front piece, pull it in. And I guess I may have made this entire frame a little bit too deep, but then inset, extrude again, maybe select the whole thing and just bevel it one layer to kind of smooth it out. I can duplicate all of this. And let's see if we can do this kind of weird shape right here. We already know we can make a circle really easily, and everything else is just insetting and extruding. So if I start with a plane like this, separate it right there, so I've got that vertice right in the middle vertex. Control Shift B. Oh, here, deselect these ones also. Control Shift B, there we go. If I go to face selection mode, X, limited dissolve, I'm gonna try to do the same thing here. There, okay, now we've got the three pieces we want. So what's tricky about insetting is because it goes a set distance from the edge, we're gonna have trouble right here during these, because it's gonna start eating into itself really fast. So instead, I might, let's see, what's the best thing to do here? Well, it's more clicks than I'd like, but I can just use the knife tool and kind of drag from there to there, hit A to snap it to 90 degrees, and just add a little bit more geometry to just block off that entire area to begin with. And now I can go a little bit further here. Let's do that. Let's do that. And I'm going to select all of these new loops we just made here. And maybe we'll just bevel the outside of them and see kind of how that looks. Yeah, that's not too bad. Right now, these are perfectly intersecting. So sometimes I'll just, you know, set to individual origins and just rotate it the tiniest bit. There we go. Here, we'll make these fill the entire spot. And as a final step, maybe we'll do these kind of square window frames on the inside, because that looks pretty easy. So I'll delete these inner windows here, stick a plane in there, have it kind of fill the whole thing, maybe divide it in half. I'm going to extrude the bottom half out a little bit as if it kind of, you know, it slides over itself. And with both of these, I can just do my usual, you know, inset and extrude kind of deal. Going to hit Y, extrude these out, select them and hit Shift N just to make sure the normals are on the outside so the glass will render right. In fact, let's hit P and separate by selection and make it its own object so we can really easily turn these all to glass later. Going to slip all these into their windows. And here, I'll get rid of this old protrusion here, and let's try sticking in our new windows. I think height-wise, it should probably be about right there. And here, I'll make it all the right width. Delete these cubes. I like these cubes because they add this kind of inadvertent random shadow over the storefront, which I think actually adds some nice realism. So I might add something like that later. Here, let's slip this back onto the right area here. Cool. And here, let's just extrude this to fill up that space. If we want to make it look good, we can do our weird little custom bevel thing here. In fact, we'll do it down here too. Once you got it, stick it everywhere. Along that same vein, let's reuse this weird kind of Art Deco-y thing that we made. Stick that up there. Here we can center our circle over the top of that. Join all of this, give it this same material. Cube projection, great. I'm gonna give all of these glass. And the window frames could be whatever, but let's make them, I don't know, just dark. Gonna add a little bit more geometry in the back here to hopefully let me kind of inset these windows a little bit easier. If I select this and this and this and this and inset each individual face and kind of just try to line it up. Here we go to individual origins with the window behind it and kind of extrude that in. Extrude it in again. I'm gonna select this face and this face, right click, bridge faces. We get kind of like a stupid little interior there. Same thing with that. In fact, we'll make the whole thing connected. There we go. We've got a room. If we expand the selection, cube projection, there. Okay, that's looking nice. Given the height of the door, these windows feel really weird, but I don't totally know. I mean, I could just select everything, tab into edit mode, and if I just pull everything down together, will that look stupid or... No, that's acceptable. Okay. And because it's fun, kind of losing the plot a little bit here, but let's just keep going with the storefront. I'm going to add some text here. We'll add a big sign. So what's cool is the default geometry tools under the text tab give you so many great options. First, let's find a good font. I just like something big and bold. Honestly, hard to go wrong with Arial Black. Let's do that. We'll call this Pink Store. Great. I'm going to scale that up, and you'll see that it gives us options for beveling and extruding. I'm going to extrude it right off the bat here. And it also gives you an option for offsetting, which basically just, extrudes along the normals. It gets weird once it intersects like this, which is why I like to start with a big, thick font, kind of like this. But if we offset all of these out a little bit, and you can also see the fill mode lets you fill in the interior. If we go to none, that just frames the outside. But let's just have it do the back here. And I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to have it just be the front, and I'm going to change the offset to be in the other direction here, and maybe I'll bevel this a little bit too. We can pull this out. Here I'm going to hide this. I'm going to just duplicate this again, turn the extrusion all the way down, and offset it so it's just really small. And if I give this an emissive value, maybe 5, and if I give this some sort of metallic option here, turn that down, and if I give the front one some sort of translucent, here let's combine a glossy and a translucent, and we make the day really dark, we've got a sign that'll actually kind of glow. Here, we'll make this be pink. Ooh, that looks cool. In fact, let's because when it looks really fun is when things are a little bit uneven, and so you get kind of, because this is actually being illuminated from the inside, if we change the offset here until it starts to fall apart and move it closer to the front so we can actually see those shapes a little bit. Look at that. Oh, that's nifty. I guess right here it's clipping a little bit, but I'm not worried about that. And what's fun is this isn't even geometry yet. This is all just, text object. And so we could really easily change it to say, can we change all 3 at once if I hit tab? No, it looks like I've got to do all of them. Or wait, can I? If I hold down Alt. I feel like you should be able to do that. Let's change them to Huberfish, and Huberfish is the font pack that my friend made for me, which is available here on the Patreon if you want it. But it's got some fun kind of logos like this. So yeah, let's maybe do that one. Let's see, that's O. So I'm gonna select that, make it O, select all of these, change it to O, and make both of these Huberfish too. There we go. Maybe it's some logo inside the store window. We'll see if that looks kind of cool. Ooh, that does look kind of cool. Oh, it looks like a T-Mobile store. And this will be very inelegant, and I don't even know why I'm doing it, but let's do it anyways, because I did take all those pictures of the inside of the storefronts. So I'm going to delete the front face of this. This will be our store interior. I'm going to create a new emissive material. Going to give it a image texture. Let's try this one and see what we can do. I'm going to kind of pop into here so that my view of the cube matches the view in the store, and hit U. project from view. I'm going to go into the UV editor here. And unfortunately, you can already see we're getting these really weird zigzags here because it really doesn't want to be distorting a face like this. Like in reality, this is a square face, but we're trying to like unwrap like this. If it were like this, it would actually work pretty okay. And if we like subdivide this a bunch, everything kind of cleans up, but that's always a little bit weird. But maybe we'll do that at the end here. Because what we can do is we can literally just line this up right here on the image. I'm going to kind of try to keep it inset, following the shapes that are already here. Subdivide a few times to kind of clean it up. Again, I don't like doing that anymore, but maybe that's okay. Let's add this little box right here. If I just do this and hit U, project from view, do the same thing, line up these edges so they kind of match. Maybe stack them. This is not the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. And what's nice is once you have this, you know, we can just duplicate it and flip it and stick it on the other wall too if we want to. And there we go. Now that feels like the inside of a store. Let's actually stick it in there. It kind of works here. We can extrude Shift G coplanar. I'm gonna pull all of this back here. If I expand the selection, we should just be able to, let's see. If I select all of these and scale them down even more, we can get that whole perspective going. In fact, yeah, there we go. But the thing that really sells realism is like tiny little micro details. Let's do something I've been having fun. We'll do our usual kind of cable thing. Let's delete this. Let's extrude this out. V, set it to automatic. Gonna pull these down just a little bit. Maybe even more. I'm trying to avoid that, you know, cyberpunky, you know, just loosely draped cables everywhere thing. Here, we'll duplicate this too. Scale that down. I'll make a tiny little like dark gray box there to look like it's some sort of like connection line or something. Dark. Under the curve options, we'll turn up the depth, thicken them up just a little bit. And that looks okay. I want to do something I've been doing lately. Here, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to turn the depth all the way down, which means now we have, you know, a beveled version and a very thin version going on here. I'm going to right-click and convert this into a mesh. So now we've got all of our usual, you know, vertices and everything instead of those handles. I'm going to delete those. I'm going to select this and right-click, subdivide, and maybe cut it up a couple times and just give it a little bit of a fractal thing. Make it a little bit bouncy. Then can hit Control-Shift-B to kind of smooth those out a little bit. Pull it down to just kind of look like it's hanging from that thicker wire. Then right-click, convert back into a curve, and just give it a little bit of thickness here. And look at that. It's subtle, but it gets rid of that, you know, Bezier feeling that so many CG cyberpunky scenes seem to have. It just kind of adds that, like, I don't know, maybe it's fraying insulation or just a secondary wire that was zip tied on there or something like that. And kind of along that same vein, this works okay, but it's basically just primary details. You know, we've got the frontage, we've got the signs, but we don't have any like secondary detail type stuff. So let's add some gutters and drain pipes and stuff on the outside. And I want to see if we can do it in kind of a clever way here. So I'm going to create a plane. And I'm just going to try to create a chain of vertices here. Extrude where I want the gutters to go. Always trying to keep them kind of sloped downward so the water could flow. And here I'm going to add a new point here, duplicate it, and create a whole new kind of string here. I hope this works, otherwise I'm going to feel very silly. And I'll probably delete it and pretend it never happened. Here, we'll pull this out. Maybe going overkill on the gutters, but maybe that'll be fun. And look, we can right-click, convert to a curve, and just turn up the depth here, and kind of get our immediate drain pipes, which is yeah, I don't know, it looks okay. Let's undo that and go back into our mesh options here. I'm going to select all of these hard corners, and I'm going to hit Control-Shift-B to smooth them all out. It looks like we still have our crazy things. Let's go back to Super Ellipse and set the shape to, I don't know, whatever feels right. I think it's just 0.5. Yeah, it's ugly, probably doesn't make any sense, but now we can convert back to a curve. As long as you don't apply, you know, if we turn the depth up on this and then we convert it into a mesh, we can't turn it back into a curve because it's like, I don't know what that is. It just gives us these circles. But as long as you like set this down to 0, you can jump back and forth as much as you want, which is a handy thing to be able to do. And I think I like that, so I'm going to convert that back into a mesh, and I'm going to add some loops here. We'll get rid of them later. I just kind of want some geometry for this step. And then I'm going to try something which maybe won't work. If I Control-Alt-Click on this like we were talking about earlier, and go, let's see, check or deselect, and make it so that it's very, you know, maybe something like that. Then go Select, Loops, Edge Loops, hit Control-B, Alt-E, Extrude Faces along normals. Look at that. I don't know, that kind of works. Maybe we'll do the exact same thing here. Control-da-da, da-da. Da-da, ba-da, ba-do. Cool, and now I think if I go into here and just hit X, limited dissolve, it'll clean up all those extra loops we added so we don't just have a bunch of like extra geometry sitting around. And maybe right click, auto smooth, and turn up the angle so we get, yeah. I wonder if I can just link this same material here and kind of give it a cube as if it's been painted over along with everything else. I don't know if it's good, but it kind of works. Here, we'll turn the cleanliness way down. I think I want to tuck these front ones in a little bit. And now I think I'm done, but I think I just want to play a little bit too, because we've got this nice kind of sign going on here. Let's rotate it 90 degrees and come up with some quick kind of mounting stuff. Ooh, I like how that looks up there. So I'm going to select that and go into local view, and I'm going to create a plane. And I'm going to extrude these around as if they're, you know, some sort of like bent metal frame around the outside. Maybe overshoot a little bit here. Let's go all the way over to the wall here. Extrude it up. Select these. Hit F. Let's duplicate these ones. And we'll do kind of like a lower wall mount too. Kind of goes up to there. Connects over. In fact, let's just add some extra stuff here. And then it'll go up. We can make this one all a little bit narrower as if it's a different type of metal. I'm going to Control-Alt-Click on both of these things here too, so we can Control-B and smooth everything out. Select everything and hit Shift-N, make sure the normals are calculated, then Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, thicken it up a little bit. So that'll be a good sign mount. And if we want, we can just, we'll duplicate these faces and kind of just shrink them in there a little bit, add a little bit more visual interest. I want a random wire coming out of here. What's the easiest way to do that? We'll just do a plane again, delete these vertices, and I'm going to keep it nice and kind of rough a little bit. I'm going to do the same things before, subdivide, but I'm going to turn that fractal way up. I want to keep it kind of intense like this. Yeah, and maybe just clean up some of these. Right-click, convert to curve, thicken it up. And that looks cool. I like how it's reflected and it's affecting, you know, the lights hitting everything. That's really rad. Last thing, let's do a bench, kind of using some of these same techniques. I think I want to do it like a curve, and then we'll have the back of the bench like this, and this will connect kind of like that, which means we're going to model just this out of a mesh, and then we'll turn that into a curve, and hopefully it should just be that easy. Let's find out. So mesh plane here. Going to just delete those vertices. I can extrude this over and back up to make sure these are flush. I'm going to scale them to 0 on the y-axis. Then I can extrude them like this and pull them back and hit F to connect them. I'm going to select all these points and hit Control-Shift-B, smooth everything out. I can select this and tuck it in like that. Is there a way to extrude vertices? Yes. Okay. There we go. And I want to point this out really fast because this is kind of the whole deal. You'll notice a minute ago I extruded each of these vertices independently and then selected them and scaled them to 0 on the y-axis because I knew if I tried to do them at the same time, it would extrude this entire selected edge and you get a face. So if I can just remember in the future that if I hit Alt-E, extrude vertices instead, I can save myself a lot of time, especially because I've been increasingly doing this kind of vertice-based workflow. Oh, it's right here in the right-click menu. That's really cool. And the way I try to make that happen is if I ever find myself kind of doing it the wrong, slow way, I'll literally undo it and just force myself to do it the right way, maybe a couple times, just to get that muscle memory going. Or Alt-E. Let's see, this is actually interesting that it pops up right here in the right-click menu. Is that because I just did that, or has that been there the entire time? All right, now I've extruded an edge. Right click, extrude edge. Well, it's context dependent. Right click, extrude vertices. Huh, cool. Part a little bit. Round these out. Duplicate it. Bring it over. It looks like my proportions might be horrible. Just pull that down. And if we convert to curve and turn up the depth, how does that look? It's fine, I guess. So, I should probably look at reference of an actual bench, but maybe it's a sci-fi bench. Then I'm going to right-click, set origin to geometry, so we have a point right in the middle of the object, which will let me hit Shift-S, cursor to selected, so we can make a cube that's right in the middle of the bench, which makes it really easy to be able to kind of pull things out like that. Select all those, put them on the back. Maybe convert the curve object back into a mesh so we can join everything up. Give it some sort of like dark material. And we can stick it in front of our store here. Maybe we'll make the inside kind of brighter too. Ooh, we could even make it so pink. Would that look cool? Probably not. Multiply. Ooh, we can make it some crazy color. What if it's all yellow? Ooh. Ooh, or kind of blue. Or here, let's just change the hue. See what we like the most. Oh, that's kind of fun. Yeah, turn the saturation down just a tiny bit. And yeah, I guess that's all I was going to talk about. Depending on where you're at, you know, in your learning process, maybe this is all stuff you've already known for a million years and you've seen a million times before. But hopefully there's one technique in here that you're like, that might save me some time someday. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to go eat a Christmas cookie. All right, talk to you soon.